We got a Thursday crowd rolling in. Kenahara, good evening, Randy. Reuven and David Akoyan.
Because we're going to miss you this weekend, Rabbi.
Send me a postcard, Garl. Got a Thursday crowd. I look forward to the wonderful postcards that are going to show up in Boise. Okay, we are live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. I'm going to share this on two more platforms, and then we're going to get started this time. This way, we'll give people an opportunity to join. Oh, Ada's logging in, huh?
When we take the rock off the door?
Nah, if they come in, who they're going to have, me and you? They'll kill us. We'll be okay. Don't worry. Just the two of us. Exactly. I wasn't worried. Okay. Okay, that is posted, and one more. Oh, another one coming in. Gibba Cook. And last but not least, and then we're gonna roll. Good to see everybody. Maybe Mitchell's coming. I don't know. If it's a terrorist, just invite him to the class. Tell him he'll learn something. Okay, we are on all the platforms. Baruch Hashem. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to, let's open up our Chumash, chapter 19, verse 15. So it's on page 722. So this week it's a double. So first of all, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. I know it's not on the regular Wednesday schedule. Tavi had a women's event last night, and so we work as a team. So we're here Thursday night in Mitzvah Shem in the morning. I fly to Boise for the regional conference of Chabad rabbis. So for those that were not in Shul this past week, this Shabbos, there will not be services in Shul, but Shul will be open for those that would like to come and pray. If you'd like to pray in Shul, it is open for you to do so. Good to see you. Oh, I don't see you, but good to see you with us, Dimitri. Continued good health and only good news. We are in a double parsha. We're slowly heading towards the end of Leviticus of Vayikra. Achrei Mois Kedoshim. And the first of the two parshas that we read this week, is mostly about laws of the temple and tabernacle. A lot of laws related to the Kohanim, to the priests. Of course, like every Torah portion, it's not just the priests, and it covers a lot of actually the sexual prohibitions of the Torah, which is quite a list of prohibitions of all different types of relationships. But even that's correlated with the holiness and purity that's expected of the Jewish people in the context of entering the temple, serving God, etc., etc. The second parsha, Kedoshim, which we read, is one of those parshas that include numerous mitzvahs, many of which are interpersonal between fellow human beings. Just as an example, in the portion of Kedoshim, there's 13 positive mitzvahs and 38 prohibitions in one parsha. So you have over 50 mitzvahs of the 613 commandments, over 50 of them are in the second Torah portion that we're going to read this Shabbos of Kedoshim. On page 722, second reading, it says, top of the page, you, the judge, should not commit a perversion of justice. You should not favor a poor person or respect a great man in judgment. You should judge your fellow correctly. And then it talks about not being a gossiper, not holding a grudge, and not taking revenge. There's a lot of mitzvahs connected to how you have to be, basically, how you are to be a mensch. Now, first of all, on the most basic level, Rashi gives us the most basic interpretation. And that is a Jewish court, a rabbinic tribunal, needs to take their job of being impartial and objective and non-biased absolutely with the greatest scrupulous behavior possible. We don't even talk about it a lot. Most people refer to a Jewish tribunal or Jewish court as Bet Din, but the real name for it is Bet Din Tzedek, which means a house of judgment, of righteous judgment. Tzedek from the word tzedakah, of righteousness. And so in most Jewish communities, you hear them say, badatz this, badatz that. Badatz is an acronym for 3 words, Bet Din Tzedek. In Israel, there's bagatz and there's badatz. Bagatz is a Bet Din Gavoh, I think. It's right? Chagai, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Supreme Court of Israel is called bagatz, but a Bet Din is called badatz, Bet Din Tzedek. So Rashi says, first and foremost, if you're a judge on a Jewish court, you have an absolute obligation to judge impartially, which means if someone is poor, and by the way, we see this so much in today's modern era, and people say, was it always this case? I don't know. I was only around in this modern era. I was not around before. But this idea that you have judges sometimes who, because they have pity on the poor person, they will make a judgment that is absolutely wrong. I would venture even to say bordering on evil, because they think they're going to solve a universal problem or universal imbalance or universal or the lack of equality by judging in favor of the poor person, even though the poor person is wrong. In Judaism, that's an absolute sin, because there's righteousness, there's correct, and there's incorrect. But the same thing happens when the good old boys judge for their fellow rich person or their fellow country club member against the poor person, against someone who was mistreated, because they want to find favor in their, in their friends from the golf club or from the country club. So either way, in Judaism, a judge needs to take their role as an objective arbiter of the law, of Jewish law, 100%. But then Rashi says that there's another opinion, that this verse that says, the verse that we read that says that you should judge your fellow correctly, b'tzedek tishpoit amitecha, what that verse actually means is Heve done es chavercha l'kav schus, which in regular English translates as you should give your fellow the benefit of the doubt. But an actual translation means you should judge your fellow with a measure of merit. And I'm saying that translation versus the giving your friend the benefit of the doubt, because I think that exact language of judging your friend with a measure of merit is very unique to what I'm going to discuss towards the end of the class. So it goes to an idea, and this is actually according to the second opinion, this is a biblical commandment, that we are biblically mandated, just like we're mandated to love your fellow, and just like we're mandated not to hold a grudge, and just like we're mandated not to take revenge, and just like we're mandated to have impartial justice, we are mandated by the Torah as Jews to see people in a favorable way. Not to automatically be the cynic, the pessimist, and see the worst in humanity, but to see the good. I know that's very, very hard for people to hear. And I know it's very hard for Jews to hear in particular, because then you can't be judgmental. And then you can't be a yenta. And you can't, they say the story about a woman who was in the grocery, and she overheard 2 other women talking about a particular young woman. And the young woman is this, and the young woman's that, and she does this, and she does that. And this woman who's listening is getting enraged. What kind of girl behaves that way? She was almost ready to join the conversation and tell them how angered she was by this girl's behavior, until she heard them mention the girl's name, which was her daughter. And suddenly she paused and go, oh boy, that's such a wrong judgment. They don't know my daughter, right? When it's the other person's kid, boy, in 5 seconds, we're ready to judge. We have a whole history of how we're going to deal with it. Part of learning to judge others favorably, which is something I wrote in my weekly email. I believe it was I wrote it for the Chronicle. It's going to be in the paper on Shabbos. If we want others to give us a second, if we want others to give us a second chance, which is Pesach Sheni, on Monday is going to be the second Passover, we need to learn to give other people the second chance, which is all included in this idea of seeing people favorably. But Rabbi, they're so bad. And what if that's such bad? What if your kid was doing that? So you'd put them in their place, you'd speak truth to justice, you tell them what you think, but would you hate them? It's your kid. It becomes complicated. So this person that you're talking about is God's kid. God created them. So I'm not saying you have to treat the whole world exactly as you treat your kid, because that would be foolish and unnatural. But some context, some perspective, that how would you treat the situation if it was someone closer to you? or for that matter, more importantly, yourself. This is the great story, it's a biblical story in the book of Samuel of King David, when King David had the illicit relationship with Bathsheba and he impregnated her. Right? Bathsheba was Solomon's mother, but she was married to Uriah Hittite. She was married to Uriah. And he sends Uriah to the front line. He gets killed on the front line. And now he has a new wife. And Nathan the prophet comes. When Nathan the prophet comes to King David and says, I have a question for you. You masterful, brilliant king. I am the prophet of the Jewish people. I have a question for you. What's my question? There was a rich man and a poor man. And the rich man had a crazy amount. Oh, Mick, you're smiling because you know this from Shmuel. You have crazy amount of lambs on a big farm and a big ranch. And then someone came, and then there was a poor guy that had one lamb that the whole family invested in, and they took care of it. And it was the family lamb. And one day, a very important person came to town, and they said they want to have a fancy dinner. So the rich man goes and takes the poor man's lamb and slaughters it and serves it. And he says, King David, what would you rule? King David was getting angry about the rich person. Why would you do that? And Nathan the prophet, Nasan Hanavi, used it as an example and said, that's what you did. You took someone's wife, even though you have many wives. And then that's when it hit King David and he became a contrite heart. That's why we have Kapitel Nun Aleph, Psalm 51 in Psalms, is all about David's recognition when he got that message from Nathan the prophet. And he said, V'chatasi negdi sami, that my sin will forever remain before me. I'm never going to forget about my sin. And he did. He lived the rest of his life. Not that he served God without joy, but he lived the rest of his life with the recognition that he's a flawed human being, which allowed him to be humble in his kingship until he died at the age of 70, King David. But so often we are so easy to judge. When the other guy's kid is being pulled over for a DUI, lock him up till he learns his lesson. When our kid is pulled over for DUI, Mr. Judge, Your Honor, I swear my kid will never do it again. Clemency. And Bubba Mai says, I'll sign my life away. I'll take the keys to the car. 1 second. If you don't believe that people should be driving drunk, which, by the way, I mean, I've yet to meet someone except for in Moscow that thinks that driving drunk is the way to do it. But why is your kid any different? Because it's your kid. So I'm not saying we should let all drunk drivers drive. I'm just saying we have to have an understanding that it's not just about the benefit of the doubt. It's about putting the perspective. You know, the great Rebbe Yitzchak of Berditchev, the great master who was always keen on defending the Jewish people. One year, as the Jews gathered in the shul in Berditchev for Yom Kippur, for Kol Nidre, and they're about to start the holidays a few minutes away, they see him under the benches in the shul. He's searching and searching. For a second, they thought maybe he lost his mind, and he thought he mixed up Pesach. He's searching for chametz. It was Yom Kippur. It's almost Yom Kippur. And he keeps searching and searching, and everyone's confused. And then he stands up at the bima, as he always liked to do, to defend the Jewish people. And he said, Master of the universe, Rebbeinu Shalom, you commanded us that on the eve of Yom Kippur, on the 9th day of Tishri, as we prepare for Yom Kippur, we are supposed to eat and drink and eat and drink, and the more the merrier. And yet, I looked under all the benches in the synagogue and I haven't found one drunk Jew laying on the floor. They ate and drank all day. None of them are drunk. Had you given this command to the Cossacks, they would all be drunk in the streets like a bunch of drunk peasants. And he said, Master of the universe, your people ate and they drank and they're all standing here dressed in white, prepared to accept the Day of Atonement and to atone for their sins. This is your people. Please judge them favorably. Right? You have a room full of Jewish ignoramuses. Who do you think was hanging out in Berditchev? It wasn't a shul of, the greatest Torah scholars in the world. They were Jews. They were tailors. They were shoemakers. They were ranchers, farmers, milking goats. And yet, Berditchev saw the soul. He recognized how they need to be, what perspective we need to have. You know the story with the guy that was with his wife. The guy's walking through Macy's, and he hears a guy tell his wife, drop dead. Turns to the guy, are you crazy? You're telling your wife drop dead in the middle of Macy's? He says, sir, I think you're a little confused. My wife asked me if I think her new dress is gorgeous. And I said, yes, drop dead. And before he could finish anything, this Chacham already judged him for the drop dead. He didn't hear the yes, he didn't hear the question, but we already made a judge, the jury, the executioner, all at once, because we heard the guy tell his wife drop dead without knowing the context. And when we're judging people, and when we live in a mindset of judgment, it's inevitable. Everything we're going to see through the eyes of judgment. We're going to see through the eyes of cynicism, and we'll never see ourselves that way, because the whole concept of being cynical and seeing everything negative is just a way to make us feel good. So when it comes to us, everything's fantastic. You know, sometimes you see someone eating a big plate of food. You know, us people that are the heavyweight champion crew, you know, what is it? You know, Honey, I Blew Up the Kids instead of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So, you know, when you see someone have this big, who eats like that? You know why it gets so bothered? You know why it bothers us so much? Because it reminds us of us. We just don't put those two and two together at that moment. So we see it as, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because really we're seeing a mirror of ourselves. It's something that is really, really hard to incorporate. I don't want to sit here and sound like it's easy. It's not. It's way easier to be cynical and judgmental. It's way easier to see the world in the most negative way. You know, back in the early 70s in Johannesburg, South Africa, the first Chabad Shliach, representative of the Rebbe in South Africa, Rabbi Mendel Lipsker in Johannesburg in the early 70s. And he became a rabbi of a shul where most of them, I think it was called the Yovel Shul, most of the members were senior citizens. And suddenly on Yom Kippur, middle of davening, a guy rolls into the shul, and he looks like an absolute hippie. He's wearing jean pants with sandals, with God knows his hair looked like he was wearing two shaitels, you know, and all the elderly people in the shul were very uncomfortable. Like, where's your respect? Where's your... They didn't say anything, but they were all very judgmental. The rabbi walked up to the gabbai, to the guy who gives out the aliyahs, and said, make sure to give this guy the honor of opening the ark. And Yom Kippur, this guy is going to open the ark. The rabbi didn't know him, but he was in a shum. He was a soul that came to shul. So here, there's a whole congregation, and by South Africa is a traditional community. So it was probably a packed shul, and they're looking in horror as this guy with the big hippie with the afro on his head or whatever is opening up the ark in his jeans on Yom Kippur with sandals. Fast forward, that hippie with sandals got the honor of opening the ark. I'm not fast forward an hour, but fast forward a few years and a couple of years in yeshiva. And today he's a scribe that writes Torah scrolls. Not even today. I mean, already in the 80s and 90s, he was already a Torah scroll, because someone saw him not for his whatever on his head, the tree growing on his head, and not for his sandals and not for his jeans. They saw him as a Jew that deserves to open the ark. It's Yom Kippur. Why shouldn't they have the honor? It's like the rabbi, someone actually wrote to the Rebbe. Believe it or not, someone had the audacity to write to the Rebbe that he has a big complaint against a certain shul. He was in the shul, and the rabbi got a 10th guy for the minyan, and the 10th guy sat in the back row of the shul reading a newspaper during services. So he's enraged. He writes the Rebbe a letter. And the Rebbe writes back, aren't you impressed? The guy can't read Hebrew, doesn't understand a word of what's going on in shul, and yet he chose to come and help make a minyan, and you're busy judging the newspaper. Now, let's be honest. If the guy sat in the back of my shul reading a newspaper, I'd probably do what that guy did. What are you, crazy? But listen to the perspective. And it's really fascinating, because it really takes us to the next level. And what I mean by that is as follows. And here I'm going to share with you some, I know I shared a lot of anecdotes because I think it's important to internalize and to really put meat on the bone of this concept. That's why I shared so many details, but I want to share with you an incredible deep, really deep shift or paradigm shift from the Rebbe on this exact words from Rashi. Rashi says, remember I said in the beginning that the literal translation is, judge your fellow with a measure of merit. Not just give them the benefit of doubt, judge them with a... So the Rebbe starts off with a question, and it's a good question. The question is, how would you like me to give this person a measure of merit? We're talking about someone that I saw sin. I see someone eating a cheeseburger on Shabbos afternoon right outside shul. I'm supposed to give him a measure of merit? I'm supposed to give him a frask, smack him up. What do you mean give him a measure of merit? Or Mick is smiling because Mick thinks I probably would smack him up. There's a good chance, by the way. I'm just saying. This class is more about I'm not sure if it's educating you guys more or me. But either way, you want to say, you want to do what America does, which is talk about his background, and maybe you could judge him favorably. It's not such his fault, typical. That's okay. But to say that I should give him a measure of merit, what's the merit? The guy's eating a cheeseburger on Shabbos afternoon outside of the shul. The Rebbe gives a worldview that is epic. It's a perspective that, if incorporated, would change the dynamic in the Jewish world. It would be a 180. He says, ask yourself, why does a person sin so severely? Why is the guy standing outside the shul eating a cheeseburger on Shabbos? If he's doing something so severely wrong, it means that God believed that this person has the ability to overcome that challenge. And the fact that he hasn't overcome that challenge, he's given the opportunity. But in actuality, he didn't utilize all the gifts that God gave him, all the energy and all the character traits to overcome it, so he failed. But the fact that he failed means that God believed that potentially the fact that he likes the cheeseburger so much, and the fact that he doesn't care about Shabbos so much, and the fact that he's dumb enough and has audacity to stand outside the shul and do it, it means that there's a disconnect. But the fact, when it says in the Medrash that God doesn't give us more than we can handle, means that this person is having this challenge. It means that inherently he has the ability to overcome it. So if you go over to that person now, and not just give him the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, he must have had a rough childhood or whatever, not just give him the benefit of the doubt, but gift him, judge him with a measure of merit, meaning look at his or her merit and say, wow, this person eating the cheeseburger must have a soul from the highest of places. And you tell the person, my gosh, you have such incredible, innate, divine power to overcome, because otherwise God would have never made you have that temptation in the first place. What is the chances that the next time, if you meant it seriously and genuinely, and the person felt it coming from your heart, what is the chances next time they're going to eat the cheeseburger outside of a shul? You've now shown them what they are truly capable of, what's available in their essence. Instead of judging them, you're seeing what they're doing, and you're reminding them of their innate merit, the measure of merit, which gives them the ability to deal with any future things, because God obviously trusts them. By the way, I saw this in real time. There's a video of the Rebbe. It's on video. And it was out before AI, so I know it's real. And a guy comes by the Rebbe and says to the Rebbe that he's getting married to a non-Jewish woman. And the Rebbe tells him, I'm jealous. And the guy looks at the Rebbe like he lost his mind. What do you mean you're jealous? First of all, why a guy would come tell it to the Rebbe is beyond me, but the Rebbe welcomed every person for who they are, so this guy needed a blessing for his wedding, even though he was marrying a non-Jew. And the Rebbe says to him, I'm jealous. And he's trying to figure out what the Rebbe means. The Rebbe says, I never had that challenge. You have that challenge to overcome, which means God believes you're capable of overcoming it. The Rebbe didn't say that with a lack of empathy. This guy was obviously in love, or at least he thought he was in love. So it wasn't a lack of empathy, it was a recognition of exactly what we just said, that when someone is more tempted than someone else, and sometimes they may fail in that temptation, it does not mean they're less than, it just means that they failed this time, but their innate ability is incredible. Imagine if we could start looking at our fellow in that way. And I don't mean just your fellow, the people who hang out with you in shul or come to Torah class with you. I mean, what if you just, everywhere you went, you just saw the world in that way? Right? You see a homeless guy in the corner. Just before, I saw one at the corner of Rouse and Maine. He's been in Bozeman he's been in Bozeman as long as I have, and he's been on the streets ever since I got here. So he's like a part of the family. I've seen him a thousand times. We assume, what a bum living on the street. What do we know about the guy? Chances are, by the way, just from my experience in Bozeman, that he's probably a Vietnam vet, served his country, came back to a country that trashed him, got shafted and messed over by the VA, and lost everything. And here he is on the street. Now, do I think people have the ability to pull themselves back together? Of course. I'm not encouraging people to live on the street, not even remotely. But the idea that we don't even know their story and we already judge them and we have stories to tell about them, that's the American way, except it's not the Jewish way. And I'll end with an incredible story, another incredible story about Yitzchak Barditchev. I think I've shared it once, and if I did, you could take me to court. Yitzchak Barditchev on Yom Kippur, in his town of Barditchev. By the way, it seems, based on all the stories of Yitzchak Barditchev, it was a really wild town. A Western Ukrainian town. It's still there. It's near Zhytomyr. It's about an hour and a half west of Kiev, if it's still there. I don't know if the Russians might have taken it away. But Barditchev is a city that's close to my family. My great-grandfather lived in Barditchev for a while, and he lived in towns near Barditchev. So my grandfather actually my great-grandfather, I think, sat in jail in Barditchev for a few months. But anyhow, that was way after Rav Yitzchak Barditchev. Rav Yitzchak Barditchev is 250 years ago. So Rav Yitzchak Barditchev is walking through his town of Barditchev on Yom Kippur, and he sees a Jew from the town eating in public on Yom Kippur. Imagine, not even hiding. So he walks up to the fellow and says, "Oh, my dear son, you must be really sick. Because otherwise, I'm assuming if you're eating, you were told by a doctor that you have to break your fast, and you consulted with the rabbi, and he goes, no, I'm healthy as can get." So he says, "Oh, then I'm assuming you just don't know it's Yom Kippur today." He goes, "No, what do you pray? Of course I know it's Yom Kippur." She says, "Then I assume you don't know that in Yom Kippur you're not allowed to eat." He says, "Rabbi, which Jew doesn't know that you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur?" So Yitzchak Barditchev turns up to the heaven and goes, "Rebbeinu Shalom, the master of the universe, look how amazing your people are. I tried 3 different ways," and he refuses to lie. He refuses to say a non-truth. Now, if we saw someone do that, what a nerve. He knows it's Yom Kippur. He knows it's prohibited. He's not sick. And he has the nerve to tell the rabbi that he knows that all while he's eating his sandwich in public on Yom Kippur. Now, Yitzchak Barditchev was like, hold on. Look at a beautiful Jew who doesn't lie on Yom Kippur. Doesn't lie, refuses to lie. He had the opportunity. He could have just said, "Yeah, Rabbi, I'm sick." Could have said, "No, Rabbi, oops, I didn't realize it was Yom Kippur. Oh, I forgot that you can't eat on Yom Kippur." You know who ends up feeling much better about when we see the merit, the measure of merit in everyone? We do. How much of our anger, how much of our anxiety, how much of our rage, how much of our depression comes from reading negative things about other people or other countries or other nations around the world? Right? If you go on Twitter right now on X and you're Jewish, you're signing yourself up for depression. There's thousands of these anti-Semites that sit a whole day trolling Jews with the most vile, medieval, blood libels, you name it. So what? So what? You want to look at that all day? It's your choice. You want to look at the world from that cynical view? You're looking for reasons to be enraged and angry? You have families for that. You don't have to go very far, right? How do you think they're sister-in-laws? No, brother-in-laws too. The point is, no one wants that, and so much of our personal angst is because we allow that cynicism and the negativity to permeate our being. I find myself that the days that I'm that busy that I can't even catch a glimpse of the news, I'm so much happier. What did I miss? Who asked me before, what do I think about the new Pope? How about I didn't think about the new Pope? I tell you, he looked like the old one. I have no idea. Very nice. I'm a gesund. What's that to do with me? The guy was talking. I tuned in for a minute. I heard about Maria, some Maria and Mary. I got to the part. What's in my department? The point is, we don't have to infuse that into our system. Yeah, you're bored. Get a good book. I just got 2 new ones yesterday. One about Rabbi Beryl Levy, who was the one that took the OK Kosher Laboratory and turned it into a massive kosher operation in America. And his story is fascinating. I just started reading it. Another one is called The Queen of Cleveland, about Rebbetzin Shula Kazin, who was the Rebbetzin in Cleveland for over 70 years, 80 years. There's so much good out there. And if we stop being so judgmental, people that we're in contact with will be less judgmental of us. We'll give them second chances. They'll give us second chances. We will see the good in people. We will see them with a measure of merit and realize that if they're super challenged, spiritually or otherwise, it's because God entrusts them to overcome that. And even if they fail, the trust is still there. We just have to help cultivate it so that next time they can do better. And we cultivate it by reminding them in the nicest, kindest, empathetic way that they are so much better because they have incredible merits and blessings from Hashem to do so. And so, as they say when I go to those boring interfaith meetings, let us pray. Let us pray that we do better and that the world is showered by individuals who focus on bringing people together, not dividing our society. It doesn't mean you can't have principles. It doesn't mean you can't have opinions. It just means that your principles and opinions should not create division. You can stick to your principles and still be a godly, loving human being who sees the good in humanity, the good in the world, and celebrates that instead of celebrating the negativity that's so easy. And with that, I'll wish you all an early good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach, with God's incredible help and blessing. I look forward to seeing you back here next Wednesday. Not next Thursday, next Wednesday. Sei gesund, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Randy. Good night.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Travels, Margot and Haggai.
They're going to be with me soon, Jen. They're coming to me. Dimitri, I saw you there for a second, Dimitri. You look great.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
If you're up and running and you're up to it, or you can wait till Tuesday, but if you're up and running, your JLI book is on the Shul library table.
I will be there on Saturday.
Okay, it's all yours. I will not be there on Saturday.
And I heard that.
I mean, 86 degrees in Boise on Saturday.
79 over here.
79 in Bozeman, ain't 86 in high desert Boise, but it is what it is.
It's going to be beautiful.
We're going to take many, and we'll skip out of town tomorrow morning at 5:40.
Enjoy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Sei gesund.
Take care.
Okay, everyone. Michal. Oh, who's that? Gordy. Gershon Beryl. Unmute yourself.
There you go.
Gershon Beryl, how are you? Haven't seen you in ages.
It's been too long.
You're not coming to fish in Bozeman? You want to come fishing with me? I don't go fishing, but if you come, I'll go fishing.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay, you got it, man. It's wonderful to see you.
My pleasure. It's good.
Sei gesund.